Tonight, supply chain concerns. What could be behind the empty shelves?
Probably over the last couple of weeks, I've noticed that certain items aren't being restocked.
More shoppers are noticing empty shelves at their local grocery store. Some say the vaccine mandate for truckers is toppling an already shaky supply chain. Plus,
we're seeing good progress on the basis of what we've been doing to date.
as the city marks exactly 2 years since its first confirmed case of COVID-19, a sense of optimism from officials that the worst is behind us. And
this is a clear destination that people would travel long distances to enjoy.
A large immersive playground will be the highlight of Toronto's reimagined waterfront. We'll have more on the city's plans to transform the area. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. First tonight, one person is dead after a stabbing in Mississauga. The suspect still at large. It happened just after 6:30 in the area of Erin Mills Parkway and Fowler Drive. Peel Police gave an update from the scene.
Upon arrival, officers located the victim suffering from apparent stab wounds, and life-saving efforts were immediately commenced. At this time, I can confirm that a 41-year-old man has died as a result of those injuries, as I mentioned, and investigators from our Homicide and Missing Persons Bureau have taken care of this investigation.
Police not releasing any suspect description. Officers will continue canvassing the area through the evening, searching for witnesses as well as security footage. Anyone with information should contact Peel Police or Crime Stoppers. A convoy of trucks from Western Canada is making its way to Ottawa. This weekend, they will stage a demonstration at Parliament Hill, protesting against vaccine mandates for cross-border truckers. The federal government says it will not back down on its vaccination rules, but there are concerns tonight that it could be contributing to existing food supply issues. Our Chris Glover reports.
The obvious examples is when you walk to a meat section and there's hardly any meat.
In the last 2 weeks in particular, Brian Secandi is finding empty shelves at his South Etobicoke grocery store, and what is left on store shelves is costing him way more.
It's just creating a sense of a bit of an anxiety to kind of be like, will this get worse?
If you walk into a grocery store and you see empty shelves, thank Justin Trudeau.
The federal Conservatives are convinced the problem is the Liberals' new requirement that truckers crossing into Canada from the U.S. are vaccinated. The Canadian Trucking Alliance estimates some 26,000 regular cross-border truckers would be taken off the road due to the mandate.
That's kind of been the third pillar that has been toppled over and which is kind of creating these constraints.
University of Toronto employment relations professor Rafael Gomez says the mandates are toppling an already shaky situation. The years-long global supply chain crisis spurred on by the pandemic is pushing truckers to carry more lucrative products instead of food. Plus, a pre-existing labor shortage means any loss of truckers is more likely to be felt. And tack on the wild card of last Monday's epic winter storm.
Add to this sort of perfect storm is the mandates, which came into effect right in January, which is for Canada really important because most of our fresh food during the winter months only comes from the south.
He says the mandate should be revisited, and the Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers agrees.
We're in uncharted waters, and there are so many different things impacting our supply chain. To add another layer, which we've now done, is just going to cause more disruption. And ultimately, the bottom line is it's going to lead to more costs.
I think a lot of people have to realize that there's a human cost to all of this.
Secandi just worries amid debates over vaccine mandates and global supply crises, consumers like him are getting forgotten. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
It was exactly 2 years ago today that Toronto saw its first case of COVID-19. A lot has changed since then. The virus is different, and so is our ability to protect against it. More than half of Torontonians have now received a third dose of a COVID vaccine. And today, city officials say they are optimistic the worst is behind us. Ali Chiasson has more.
2 years since the first case of COVID-19 arrived in Toronto, and we're still seeing the impact.
As of January 24th, 3,943 Toronto residents have lost their lives to COVID-19. I extend my deepest sympathies to all those who've experienced tragedy because of this virus.
2 years ago today, Sunnybrook was treating Toronto's first known case of COVID-19.
The case is in a male who's in his 50s. He had traveled to Wuhan, China, and come back, and within a day became quite ill, was taken to Sunnybrook Hospital, and is now in a negative pressure room. All the staff are taking appropriate precautions, and the condition is stable.
He recovered well, being discharged within a week.
He will remain in isolation in his home until such time that public health is confident that there is no risk of transmission.
What we didn't know was how many cases were circulating. And soon we were in the first wave, with no vaccines to protect anyone, let alone the most vulnerable. Thousands of cases came in further waves, which would recede with the rollout of the COVID vaccine, and things would feel slightly normal until a new variant shut everything down again. Throughout the last 2 years, people have adapted new ways of working, schooling, parenting, and socializing. This week, Ontario marked its 1 millionth case, and we're about to try reopening again on Monday. Dr. Eileen de Villa says she's optimistic we've seen the worst of the pandemic, but that people will have to remain diligent and vaccinated.
We're seeing good progress on the basis of what we've been doing to date. I ask that Torontonians continue to put all the lessons we've learned over the last 2 years and the lessons and the practices that we've been using for the past few weeks now, particularly since the arrival of Omicron, to good use.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Another cause for optimism from city officials, COVID absences are improving among emergency responders.
Over the past 3 weeks, our unplanned absence rates in both paramedic services and fire services have continued to decrease each week.
During that time, Chief Pegg says unplanned absences among fire crews dropped nearly 10% to 3.5. Paramedic absences dipped even more from 19% to just under 8. Pegg thanking today all emergency crews for their tireless effort and long hours throughout the pandemic. More than a week after the big winter storm, city crews are continuing to work around the clock to clear snow off roads and sidewalks. Now, yesterday's dumping of another 10-15 centimeters not helping matters either. The city says, though, more than 19,000 tons of snow has already been cleared. But as Greg Ross reports, the job is far from over.
They're an obstacle for many, but some are making good use of the piles of snow still clogging city streets.
I usually make slides.
For most others, they've been more harm than good.
It's tough to move through. Driving can be a bit of a pain.
In this neighborhood near Adelaide West, many streets have lost a lane of traffic.
It's like maybe 1.5 at best, yeah.
And many people rely on street parking here, but good luck finding a spot.
Literally, you lost about half the parking spaces.
The street parking has been one of the big issues here, making it far more difficult for plows to clear the snow, an issue that bylaw officers are now trying to deal with.
They put out notices. They often will go door to door to try to get people to remind them to move their cars. If we have to do friendly tows, we're moving them sort of as limited as we need to in order to get the snow plowed.
The massive piles of snow that line the streets here are affecting other services like garbage pickup. This man says pickup didn't happen as scheduled today.
The poor guys are going to have to park in the street. Your garbage can wait a little longer. Darn right.
The city says they've now been to every street at least once, and they're still working to get back to areas like this that need more work.
I think there's an expectation that when we go through and plow, that we've cleared the street down to dark pavement, and that is not typically the case.
City staff tell me that they believe they've been to every street in Toronto now at least once, and they realize that some are still worse than others, but they say if you live in one of those areas where you are desperately in need of a cleanup, whether it be on a sidewalk or on a street, they say call 311 and report it, and they'll try and get out there as soon as possible. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first look at the forecast. And Colette, very cold tonight. Really need to take care out there or stay inside if you can.
Oh, Kelda, yes, here we go again. They're back. The extreme cold warning spreading down into the GTA. And we are looking at conditions that are quite serious. We're getting to the situation where as the temperature falls, but also with the winds and that wind chill, that exposed skin can get frostbitten pretty quickly. So you really need to make sure you kind of limit the time that your skin's exposed, and we want to wear layers and make sure the kids are bundled up into the morning hours. But these are the regions in that extreme cold warning, and then the extreme cold weather alert for the city as well. We had some winter weather travel advisories too, just because still dealing with a bit of lake effect. Now that will not just back off, it will back off somewhat, but also change direction. So it won't be the exact same areas being hit, but still contending with that through the overnight hours, and some cloud cover as well into tomorrow morning. Also see some flurries along the lakeshore, St. Catharines around towards Hamilton, maybe even Burlington early in the day. And then that's going to rotate around. Could even see a flurry into the city, but by the afternoon, it's over into eastern parts of the GTA. Otherwise, we'll actually get some sunshine in there. So kind of variable skies for us into Wednesday. A look at those temperatures, feeling like minus 30 tonight, Kelda, and tomorrow warming up to just minus 11, so still a significant wind chill in the afternoon.
Thanks so much, Colette. Toronto police looking for help locating the driver of a car involved in a hit and run near Weston Road and the 401 on the weekend that left a 52-year-old man dead. It happened around 11 Saturday night when the driver of this black BMW 3 Series was heading northbound on Weston Road and struck the man. The driver fled the scene but was spotted driving about 15 minutes later near Weston and Lawrence. Now, police say the vehicle would have sustained damage to the passenger side headlight and the windshield. It will also be missing a passenger side mirror. Anyone with information is asked to contact police. Toronto police have charged a 22-year-old man in connection with a deadly Boxing Day collision downtown. It happened at Richmond and Yonge Streets. A collision between two vehicles sent one of them into a crowd of people standing on the sidewalk. An 18-year-old man was killed and 7 others were injured. A large, immersive playground is set to be the highlight of the city's reimagined shoreline. Waterfront Toronto unveiling its plans for the space this week, which also includes making it more accessible. Jessica Ng has the details.
Waterfront Toronto is unveiling updated plans for the next 5 years. One of the big lessons and themes was pulled straight from the pandemic.
The public wants access to the water and they want more space, public space.
CEO George Zagaric says local visitor numbers were up as people sought to escape.
The waterfront has, quite frankly, been, the playground for everybody. We need to make sure that there's no barriers to access.
That includes incorporating more accessible infrastructure.
Beacons that could be used to help the blind, just making sure that whatever we build doesn't have huge slopes for wheelchairs.
Features you'll see in a new waterfront walkway that connects existing boardwalks from Bathurst Quay to Parliament Street. There are also plans to replace the Jack Layton Ferry Terminal and build an art trail showcasing the works of local and international artists. But the highlight, a $35 to $40 million immersive playground.
This is spectacular. This is a clear destination that people would travel long distances to enjoy.
The company calling the signature project Destination Playground. It would feature larger-than-life animals and a skating rink, part of 25 hectares of new parks in the Portland's Flood Protection Project. It's modeled after a similar attraction in Oklahoma and would be the first of its kind in Canada. Ian Culbert of the Canadian Public Health Association is excited about the playground. He says it could give a lot of opportunities for kids to engage in rule-free or unstructured play.
They learn to really stay focused on their task at hand, the task that they've set up that they want to follow. And so that those brain processes that are set up during that unstructured play carry over into the classroom.
In total, Waterfront Toronto estimates its plans will add $323 million to the Canadian economy. Jessica Ng, CBC.
Welcome back. The province's nurses union will be meeting with the Premier next week. It comes at a time when nursing shortages are worsening, with many leaving their jobs for better offers elsewhere. Lorena Redekop has more.
Emily Coffey got her first job as a registered practical nurse at a Toronto hospital almost 2 years ago. She says working in the ER was stressful.
Honestly, the patient care became unsafe. We have hallway medicine. We have nurses who are just burnt out working overtime because the hospital needs it and you want to support your team. But at the end of the day, it's exhausting.
She says she struggled and went through therapy.
staff are sick, staff's families are sick, and unfortunately you show up to work and your patient care load is no longer a 4-to-1 ratio, it's an 8-to-1 ratio.
A few weeks ago, she quit. She says she now has a better work-life balance and makes more money as a travel nurse in BC with short-term assignments. Plus, her accommodations are paid.
They were going already to Alberta. Many I know, they are going to the U.S. in droves.
The head of the Registered Nurses Association says the nurse exodus isn't new, but has increased, including within the province. Nurses leaving a permanent job to make more than double as an agency nurse.
I feel for my colleagues left in the system, and I feel even more for the patients, because then they're getting care from, as I said, nurses that are stretched to the limit. And you cannot provide safe care when you're stretched to the limit.
The hospitals.
She wants the government to repeal Bill 124 that limits public sector wage increases to $1 an hour.
I talk to nurses every day that are saying, I'm retiring, I'm quitting, I'm going to another career, and we're in trouble.
The nurses' union suggests bringing back retired nurses to support new hires, and it wants wage parity. Right now, long-term care and home care nurses make much less than those in hospitals. The union will be meeting with the Premier and the Health Minister next week after what it calls weeks of pressure.
I hope it truly is an olive branch to listen and try and work together to come up with a solution.
The government did recently approve internationally educated nurses to work in Ontario. The Premier's office says the meeting next Thursday will cover staffing shortages and other issues nurses are facing. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
You're looking at a live shot of the Toronto skyline. Partly cloudy this evening with a few flurries developing overnight and extremely cold. Currently it is minus 18 with that wind chill. Let's go back to Colette now. And Colette, unfortunately, these frigid temperatures here to stay for at least a little while.
Thanks, Kelda. Well, as mentioned earlier in the show, and of course, we are looking at the extreme cold warning and the alert for the city. So that is through tonight into tomorrow morning with really chilly conditions, but especially when you factor in the wind chill, making it feel like minus 30. And, you know, in our morning news meeting, essentially they tell me unless I have something to say about things warming up, people are they just want to tune it out. But unfortunately, like as we look at the trend, it's going to be some time. We do have a bit of a warm up coming kind of mid next week where temperatures go a little bit above freezing, a little above seasonal. That will be nice to see. But in the meantime, the trend is chilly, and tomorrow variable skies. Not only are we going to see some extra cloud cover in a few spots, whereas elsewhere it'll be sunny, but we're looking at some flurry activity too. And I don't just mean some of the effects from the snow belt into the snow squall watch and warning areas that we previously had. Those will be backing off and kind of rotating. Also rotating, there will be some of this flurry activity here. So through the Niagara region, and this is in the morning hours, kind of rotating around as the winds change direction, at least those winds aloft kind of changing directions, pushing it over towards eastern parts of the GTA by the afternoon, kind of variable skies into southwestern Ontario and into eastern Ontario. So it doesn't mean we're talking about accumulations, but you could see some reduced visibility in some of those flurries there if you're traveling, especially along the 401 later on in the day. As we head into Thursday, more cloud cover, although the temperature comes up a little bit. We should get out of the extreme cold warnings. Some flurries into the early evening for the Niagara region, and then coming into the city into the later evening. We'll be seeing kind of a dusting from that. Overnight tonight, this is a look at how it feels in southwestern Ontario, like minus 22. You're not included in the extreme cold warning, but it's still cold enough with a daytime high tomorrow of minus 10, and tonight feeling like, again, minus 30, even though we do have a range in terms of the temperature. St. Catharines will be the exception there. And then tomorrow, those daytime highs of minus 11 to minus 12, still feeling like we're in the minus teens. There's that bit of a warm up, though, coming into Thursday, although we lose any kind of sunny breaks that we'd be having. Some sunshine, though, coming back into the weekend, Kelda.
Thanks so much. Finally tonight, for most people, these cold temperatures mean you hunker indoors to stay warm. But for some daring Torontonians, it's the perfect weather for an icy dip in Lake Ontario. We caught up with a group of winter enthusiasts who say their frigid swims are not just fun, they're healthy.
What are we doing here today?
So we're going to go for a swim. There's a group of about 700 of us who, not everybody swims every day, but various people come out. And we swim year-round here at Ontario Place, and we've been swimming at Ontario Place for some years now. And so we come here regularly to enjoy nature and to get some nice, carefully controlled cold exposure, which is known to produce great health benefits.
I mean, it speaks for itself. On such a day, who can resist a plunge in the cold? It's magnificent. It's like hitting the reset button, and there's nothing better in life.
I think people are generally would be very nervous about something like this.
Well, I'm nervous every day. My mind is always here to protect my body, but when I show my mind that the body can handle it, I get stronger. And that's all about, making the spirit shine. That's truly what it is about.
So the weather is frightful, and the swim is so delightful. You get a really wonderful feeling from the cold exposure, and it's kind of a healthy burst of cold energy that kind of gives you this rush, and it's a wonderful way of acknowledging the world in which we live, and the precarious nature of our own existence is kind of, you come in with this sublime feeling that's both exhilarating and terrifying in a way, and in some sense it brings us closer to nature, I think.
How are you feeling?
Good.
I feel refreshed. It's like a rush of dopamine that you get from doing this. It's almost addictive. Getting your socks on afterwards, it's the hardest part.
No, this is something really amazing. First time seeing it, and hats off to these guys.
Good for them. That's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.